English learners, did you know that you don't actually pronounce the British P, T and K sounds, as in coffee, paper or tongue? Instead, you whisper them. And in this English pronunciation tutorial, I'm going to show you how you're already whispering certain sounds in English, which is proof that you can do this correctly. 2, I'm going to show you a simple 3-step formula that you can apply today to any word in English that contains the British P, T and K sounds, so you can immediately pronounce any word in English that contains a P, T or K sound, and this is going to double your confidence just like that. I'm then going to show you the 2 mistakes that you'll start making once you start trying to pronounce these sounds as a British speaker with a native P, T and K pronunciation, and how to avoid the mistakes. And finally, I'm going to show you a simple test you can do to confirm to yourself that you're doing these sounds correctly. And this is going to remove all confusion, doubt and uncertainty you have when you pronounce these sounds in English, or any word at all in English that contains these 3 sounds. The more of this video that you watch, the more confidence that you're going to have with these 3 sounds. So let's dive in and get started. First of all, you might be surprised to hear that in English, in British English, you actually whisper the P, T and K sounds and that you don't actually pronounce them. So first of all, I'm going to show you that you're already whispering certain sounds in English, you just don't realise it because 1, you probably never thought about it, and 2, whispered sounds in English are surrounded by voice sounds, which means that they often don't sound like they're whispered, even though they are. So let me give you an example of a sound that you already whisper in English, you just don't realise it. Imagine that you're with your friend and you are next to a baby and the baby's been crying all day and that it's finally gone to sleep. Your friend starts talking noisily and is about to wake the baby up. So you might say to your friend, "Shh, don't wake the baby up." Now, this shh noise is actually the sh sound in English, as in she, shoe or sheep. And if you take your hand and put it on your throat and make this noise, shh, you won't feel any vibrations in your throat if you're doing it correctly. Take your hand and do it now. Shh. You'll hear the noise, but you won't feel any vibrations in your throat. And the fact that you feel no vibrations in your throat is proof that you're actually whispering this sound when you're saying it. Shh. The same applies to the British sounds P, T and K. So I'm now going to give you a 3-step formula that you can apply to correctly pronounce any word in English that starts with the British P, T or K sound, so you never struggle again with these 3 sounds. So let's take the word coffee. Step 1 in the formula is to drop the K sound off the word, so you get offie instead. Step 2 in the formula is to add an H sound to the beginning of the word, so instead of offie, you get hoffy, hoffy, hoffy. Then step 3 is to whisper the K sound at the beginning of the word without adding an extra syllable. So what you'd get is coffee, coffee, coffee. And to check that you're pronouncing the K sound correctly, you take your hand and you put it on your throat and you make sure there are no vibrations when you pronounce the K sound. Coffee, coffee, coffee. Now let's apply this to the word pillow. Step 1, we drop the P sound off the word. Illo, illo. Step 2, we add an H sound to the word. Hillo, hillo, hillo. And step 3, we add the P sound by whispering it, keeping our hand on our throat to make sure there's no vibrations. Pillow, pillow, pillow. And now let's finally apply this to the T sound. We're going to take the word tongue. So step 1, we drop the T sound off the word and get ung, ung, ung. Step 2, we add an H sound to the word. Hung, hung, hung. And step 3, we put our hand on our throat to make sure there are no vibrations. We whisper the T sound and we add the T sound into the word without adding an extra syllable. tongue, tongue, tongue. Now I'm now going to give you two very important pieces of advice that apply to all three sounds, the British P, the British T and the British K sound, to avoid you making the mistakes that people then make once they start trying to pronounce these sounds with British pronunciation. So the first mistake that you want to avoid making is adding an extra syllable to the word. For example, tongue, that T sound is still part of the same syllable that the H sound is in as well. Tongue, tongue. What you're not doing is going to-hung, or t-hung, t-hung. The rhythm is still one syllable. We don't want to add an extra syllable. And the second mistake that English learners make when they start trying to pronounce these sounds with British pronunciation is they often over-pronounce the British P, T and K sounds. So, we want to make sure that a puff of air comes out of our mouth when we make these three sounds, because the nature of the sounds is the speech organs are coming together, which temporarily blocks airflow, the pressure builds up and then it explodes out the mouth. But we don't want to over explode out the mouth, and I'm about to show you the test to do this to make sure that you're not over pronouncing them. But what you want to avoid doing is take the word tongue. What we don't want to do is go tongue, tongue, or pillow, pillow. We don't over release the puff of air. We just want to make sure that enough air is coming out of the mouth to whisper the sound correctly. So here's how much air should be coming out of your mouth when you explode with the sound to make sure you're not over pronouncing it. What you want to do is imagine that you're sighing. You've had a long busy day, you've just got home, you're tired, and you're going to sigh and say, that was a busy day. That sigh is the rate of airflow that should be coming out of your mouth when your speech organs come together, so the pressure builds up and then releases. So if we sigh and then I make a T sound that pauses the airflow and then I release the airflow, here's the amount of airflow that would come out. Tongue, tongue. I'm not going tongue, okay? Now the way to actually physically feel that we're doing that correctly is to take your hand or a piece of paper and put it in front of your mouth and do it. So a mistake that a lot of English learners make is they don't release a puff of air in the first place. So if I said dung without the puff of air, the piece of paper wouldn't move, and this is a mistake. Look at this. Dung, dung. The piece of paper doesn't move. If I overdo it, I'm going to say tongue, tongue. And the piece of paper, you see a violent shake there. We want just to see a little small shake in the paper as we release it. Tongue, tongue, tongue. Or pillow, pillow, pillow. Or coffee, coffee, coffee. Can you see? The piece of paper moves a little bit when I do it. If you don't have a piece of paper, take your hand and do it, and you'll just feel a puff of air coming out in your hand. Coffee, coffee, coffee. That's the way to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So, to summarise the British P, T and K sounds, the mistake that you might be making at the moment is not whispering the sounds. We whisper the P, T and K sounds in English. And the way to check that you're doing that correctly is to take your hand, put it on your throat, whisper the sounds and make sure there are no vibrations there. P, p, t, t, k, k. We then add these sounds to the three-step formula. So we take the sound, we drop the letter off it in the first place. Step 2, we add the H sound. And then step 3 is we whisper the sound before the H sound. Then we want to make sure that we're releasing it with a puff of air, but not overly releasing it with a puff of air. We don't want to spit the sound out. And that is how you master the British P, T and K sounds. Go out there now and apply this to 3 words that begin with P, T and K that you know that you use every day. I love having a coffee in the morning, so I would go out now and practice this with the word coffee. I also most days wear a t-shirt. So I practice this technique with the word t-shirt. If you work in cargo, for example, or you drive a car to work, I would immediately start practicing this technique that you've learned today with the word car. To implement this into your English speaking, we want to practice it with the words that we know that we use every day, because that's the fastest, quickest and most effective way to take the correct pronunciation that you've just learned and then add it into your English speaking so you get all the benefits of speaking like a native British speaker. If you found this tutorial useful or surprising and you can see how it's going to benefit your English, then I wanted to share it with 5 English learning friends of yours that you know that would also benefit with more confidence or more success in their careers if they were pronouncing these sounds like a native British speaker. And then watch this video next, where you're going to learn another vitally important British pronunciation tip to speak English like a native.